I would think that it's going to be more than this, but we're looking at a minimum of 2 months. 60 days worth of production from the whole facility just has to be scrapped.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Hyundai has been fined $65,000 for employing children in Alabama. You folks know that we've been tracking this child labor story here in Alabama pretty closely, and we have a pretty big update for you this week. Only one, but one of the Hyundai suppliers that has been recently found to be employing children in Alabama has been penalized by both the U.S. and the Alabama Departments of Labor for a total of approximately $65,000, as far as I can tell. The Alabama Department of Labor said in their press release on Tuesday, 2 businesses, SL Alabama LLC and JK USA, were issued fines of $17,800 each for multiple violations of the child labor law in Alabama. JK USA, if you'll remember, was the staffing agency for SL Alabama, which employs people in Alexander City outside of Mobile down in South Alabama. That amounted to total a little more than $35,000. The U.S. Department of Labor, more interestingly, said in their own statement that they had fined and been paid by SL Alabama $30,000 as well. But here's the more interesting thing. Here's the kicker. And I think frankly the only thing of substance, right? Because $65,000, which is the total that's being paid by these varied parties to these varied institutions, the U.S. Department of Labor and the Alabama Department of Labor, $65,000, not a lot of money to a company like Hyundai, which saw $4.6 billion with a B, $4.6 billion in profit in 2021. In profit is, let's remember, profit is what you have left over after you've finished paying everybody everything. You've paid your fancy executives all their millions of dollars. You've paid your thousands of employees. You've paid everything. All of this profit is what's left over after you've paid all of your expenses. $4.6 billion in profit. And $100 billion in revenue in 2021. Right? So when we're talking about $65,000 in comparison to those two numbers, it is quite literally a fraction of 1%. A fraction of a percent of their profit in 2021. $65,000, not a lot. Just the slap on the wrist, right? It would be, that type of penalty would be like literal pennies to a normal person like you and me. But here is the thing that I think is not nothing from the U.S. Department of Labor, not the Alabama Department of Labor, but from the U.S. DOL press release, in addition to the civil penalties that SL Alabama has to pay, SL Alabama is forbidden from shipping any goods produced within 30 days of a child labor violation. SL Alabama must provide training materials to employees and subcontractors or other entities that provide workers to the Alexander City site to ensure child labor standards compliance. SL Alabama must hire a third-party company to provide quarterly child labor trainings to all management personnel and subcontractors for a 3-year period, and SL Alabama must impose sanctions including termination or suspension on any management or subcontractors found responsible for child labor violations. Now, these seem like real penalties here, especially that first one. Not being able to ship any goods produced within 30 days of the violation. So, I'm reading this as a layman, right? I'm just a normal working person, just like you. I work my 9 to 5, and I go home and I try to fight for workers' rights too. And so I have some working understanding of the law. But this is just my understanding, is that we are looking at a minimum, which I would think that it's going to be more than this, but we're looking at a minimum of 2 months, 60 days worth of production from the whole facility just has to be scrapped. Just has to be scrapped. And I say a minimum of 2 months because let's say if the violation only happened on one day, which that would be bizarre to only employ these children for one day, right? That would be a bizarre thing. Presumably this has been going on for a while. But let's say, but maybe they only were able to nail them down on one day. If that was the case, then what they're saying is that they're forbidden from shipping any goods produced within 30 days of a child labor violation. That's 30 days to and from, right? There's a 30-day radius from the violation. So we could be looking at a minimum of 60 days worth of production from this facility that just has to be scrapped. Now that sounds like a lot, so I have to wonder if I'm misinterpreting this somehow, because bosses always only get slaps on the wrist. Corporations always only get slaps on the wrist. And I know that we've got labor lawyers that listen to us, so, please do let me know if I'm missing something here. But that's how this release reads to me. And I also tweeted this out. I tweeted that paragraph of the press release from the U.S. Department of Labor and tagged a couple of labor lawyers that I follow on Twitter, and they concurred with my layman's reading of it. They said that that's what it looks like to them. So, that's pretty good. I think that's a reasonable economic penalty for using child labor. This is for, and these penalties are for, per the Alabama Department of Labor, the determination that SL Alabama had employed 3 minors aged 15, 15, and 15 in a prohibited manufacturing environment. All 3 minors were provided by JKUSA, a temporary employment agency, but were performing work at SL Alabama. The minors were operating plastic bonding machines in a prohibited occupation and location. So as far as the economic penalties go, I'm pretty happy about this. I think that's a reasonable resolution. The only other thing that we need to see is a few people marched out in handcuffs, and I think that's a pretty good resolution to this facility. And yes, I do think if we are going to be putting people in prison, we're going to be putting people in prison for all sorts of things. Absolutely. The managers, the executives who signed off on this agency, absolutely, they should be walked away in handcuffs. I'm not saying they should go to the jail for the rest of their lives. Just for this, I'm sure that you give give investigators enough time and they can find some other things that some other laws that they violated. But absolutely, I think they should do jail time if poor people are going to do jail time for much less. I do also want to mention that given my coverage of this situation, I would not be honest if I did not mention that both press releases did call out the Alabama Attorney General's office as people who helped conduct the investigation. But there is still nothing from Marshall directly on this, and if he wanted, he could pursue criminal charges. He could be the one to make sure that the people responsible do actually get walked away in handcuffs for this, and I think that's what would be warranted. I still maintain that he will probably not do that. I don't believe that this is something that even what's happened now, I don't think is something that his office is going to be touting. We haven't seen anything from him on Twitter or on the Alabama Attorney General's website. I'd love to be proven wrong. As, credit where it's due, if there were some people who were not total monsters in the office of the Alabama Attorney General's office who actually did help conduct this investigation and helped make sure that these charges were levied against SL Alabama. I appreciate your work. We are still waiting on resolution for the situation first reported by Reuters about a Hyundai subsidiary outside of Montgomery that is confirmed to have employed 2 or 3 minors and potentially as many as 50. So we'll keep you up to date on what happens there. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.